Coming up on the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, we check in to where the NIL situation is and how it pertains to maybe capital campaigns across the university. We'll give you a little update about that. We also talk a little bit about the changing avenue of how you view these college players now that they have turned into more of a mercenary. And Cody Prewitt joins the show, which I'm happy about that. So this is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. I am your host, Stephen Willis. Thank you very much for joining us, and thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So do me a favor, hit subscribe on the YouTube page, on the YouTube channel. Hit the bell for notifications when we do a new video, and upvote the video itself. Once we get to 1,000 subscribers, we are going to introduce what we are calling post-game live into Ole Miss football, to where we'll immediately get on the air, have a live show, and talk a little bit about the Ole Miss game and give you a chance to participate as well. So that could be a lot of fun. So I wanted to check in. We have Cody Pruitt coming on in the third segment of the show. That's going to come probably about the 10-minute mark, 10-15 minute mark, just to let you know. But how is NIL affecting capital campaigns? As we told you months ago, that the first victim of the NIL craze will be the capital campaign, and it was imperative to finish at least the football part of the capital campaign as quickly as possible. And everything that has happened in the months since has increasingly proven my point on that. And you have rumors of NIL deals with 2023 players, illegal as hell, by the way, for $8 million. And people are so invested we need to join these collectives to where you can just contribute money and we can buy the players we want and all this. And these capital campaigns, which right now are more important. Everybody wants a singular win in a recruiting class. But this capital thing is important to get us up to snuff in facilities before the NIL. Most of our players are coming back. Right now, I think 4 or 5 players are exhausting their eligibility. We're talking a tiny, minuscule signing class. This is the year to accentuate the capital campaign. This is the year that is important to what is going on. Now, some people might see that this is an opportunity to expand the resources that we already have. If we're only going to get 5 or 6 or 7 players, even though it's going to be more than that, there's going to be people get processed. You're going to see underclassmen declare for the NFL draft that have no business essentially doing it. They're going to end up in the USFL or XFL, which is perfectly okay. But these capital campaigns right now, the NIL is basically eating up all extra money. Now remember, when it comes to capital campaigns and these NIL, it's all coming from the same pot. This is not extra money. This never was extra money. They might do some kind of a fear tactic to try and get a couple of people to donate once, but it will not be repeatable. I think that these NIL groups will serve themselves really well by following the Clemson model and doing the I pay 20 a year, the IP tag. You do that in these NIL things, and that is where you could make a little bit of extra money, a little bit of more money. But that is at the expense of the capital campaign. And as a part of this capital campaign, they're planning on tearing down the west side of the stadium, completely modernize it. If you've seen it, it really looks like it was built in 1908 or 1906 or whenever it was. And it's really important to get all of these facilities and all this up to snuff, at least on the football end, because football is going to pay the bills. And when it comes to NIL, football is going to come first, then nothing, then nothing, then nothing, then about 6th. Baseball is going to pop up, then 7th. Basketball is going to pop up, and then 10th, all the other sports. That's just the way football works at this school. So it is important to take care of the football right now with a small class in the future. So take that expendable money and give to the capital campaign. It's important. Right now, construction has started on the IPF. I remember I moved the team basically into the IPF in 2004. We were in there putting together this metallic, it was actually silly, basically desk modules that you could set up and watch film that just was a pain in the ass to put together and wasn't very effective to begin with. And that's kind of been the story of Ole Miss for the past, 50 years. Is completely inefficient, with the exception of 1 year, 2013 and maybe 2016, but that one didn't really work out for Ole Miss as far as working at a high efficiency level. And in doing so, these NIL things is going to slow. It's going to be the NIL is going to be like Pac-Man, and everything else is going to be the pellets on the Pac-Man board, and it's going to slowly eat all the pellets up to where you're just contributing to NIL. There's nothing going on in the Capitals campaign. All of this arms race that was happening with facilities for the last 20 years is over, and it's all just going to be about NIL. And in doing so, knowing that that's going to happen, with the capital campaign that we are in right now, and with a lower numbered recruiting class that is coming down the line, I think there's an opportunity to get some money to that capital campaign and get as much completed as possible. Because this is important. This really is important, because all of the things that nobody has to worry about in Georgia, at Alabama, at LSU, at Tennessee, is going to stand out at Ole Miss as a negative. Whenever you're doing your pro and con things, the afterthoughts that is the facilities at these high-level institutions become something that you have to overcome in recruiting at Ole Miss. It's not all about the money, despite what people think. It might be for 50, 60 players, and these are the 50, 60 players that are going to determine who wins the national championship, yes. But once you get down below that, NIL values are going to be so small that facilities and things like that are going to stand out. It just is. People are going to tell you they're not going to matter. They are going to matter. This oversimplification of everything is about money is an excuse. As it sits for right now, there's a way for Ole Miss to be successful. It's hyper efficient in the recruiting end and finishing in the top 2 of these recruiting battles. Not necessarily having to win them all, because thanks to the transfer portal, the top 2 is plenty good enough. We ended up getting Zach Evans. Players are going to come because we're going to do the impression. And whenever they do the con list, going down the list, and they've eliminated Ole Miss at number 2 and go somewhere else, Ole Miss is still alive thanks to the transfer portal. And we dominate the transfer portal because Ole Miss is a pretty great place to be. It just is. But the capital campaign is important. Vastly important for a school like Ole Miss. It might not be important for Georgia. It might not be important for Alabama. It's terribly important for Ole Miss. Understand that. With the small recruiting nature of a class in 2023, maybe you can figure out a little bit of wider way whenever you're planning on giving to these NIL portals. And everybody is doing the NIL portal in a way that almost makes it sound scary. It's not. It's just like contributing to a mutual fund. We had an NIL group on a couple of weeks ago, and they talked about essentially that. All right, man, I do love March Madness, and I love those brackets, but I can't remember the last time I actually went deep or even won any money. I'm hedging my bets this year with Stat Hero's NCAA Pick'em contest. Stat Hero's NCAA Pick'ems pits the star players against each other in an amazing hybrid between fantasy and sports gambling. Take back control of these handicappers that always seem to have the advantage. Start focusing on the players you know best with the gameplay that doesn't rely on big spreads, long odds, or funky props. Stat Hero gives you the advantage, resulting in the gamers winning 4 times more often. Why? because Stat Hero eliminates the mystery about who or what you are going up against. In addition to their pick'em games, they also have dozens of lineups you can comb through to take on a head-to-head. So sign up for free right now at stathero.com/lockedon. Use promo code LOCKEDON for a 100% deposit match. That's stathero.com/lockedon. Use promo code LOCKEDON for a 100% match. That's stathero.com/lockedon. Promo code LOCKEDON. Terms and conditions apply. Now, this is the time of year I've pretty much given up on all my New Year's resolutions, but not this year. This year, I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right, thanks to Built Bar. And it's almost like it's not really a resolution because I actually enjoy eating them. All Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, including puffs. 100% real chocolate. They're low calorie, high protein. Replace your candy bars with these. They're better. A typical candy bar can be anywhere from 200 to 300 calories. But go to Built.com, stroll down to the macros chart. You'll be blown away. High protein, low cal, high fiber, low carb. Mint brownie, coconut almond, and all new for this month, white chocolate cookies and cream. They're all delicious. The new flavors are coming out all the time. If they think a flavor might be good, they'll make it. It'll be delicious, and it will be good for you. Because at Built Bar, they're all about the taste. They make it taste delicious first, then they figure out how to make it healthy. And I don't know how, but they pull it off every single time. So here's the offer. Go to Built.com. Use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right. Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms. Make sure to check out Locked On Bracket Breakdown right now, right here on the Locked On Ole Miss podcast feed and YouTube channel. College basketball experts Chris Gordy, Andy Patton, and betting expert Lee Sterling give you in-depth breakdowns of every matchup. That's right here. Just look down the YouTube page, and it's there. It's also in the podcast feed as well. Those guys do a fantastic job and are well worth the listen. Lee Sterling, he's from ParamountSports.com or something like that. He's the guy you hear on the Bo Bound Show from time to time talking about what's going on. So that's pretty good to go. So in the first segment of the show, we talked about these NIL groups coming together and how they pertain to capital spending. Now, the question of the day is, and leave the answer down in the comment section below, is how does this NIL affect the way you view college athletes moving forward? Because it's of my opinion, they've gone full mercenary. They have gone full mercenary. There's going to be players that leave your school. There's going to be players that come into your school. And your school really has nothing to do with the in-between. It's all, you get recruited by a coach. You stay with that coach. You leave whenever you need to leave. You hit the transfer portal if you're not getting playing time. But nobody is necessarily going to Ole Miss because it's Ole Miss. That is something of the past. That is something you just need to let go. Now, they're going to say the right things. They're going to do the right things. But at the end of the day, they're not going to stay at Ole Miss and sit at third in the string because they don't have to. So, my opinion is the days of the Ole Miss fan favorite, the Eli Mannings, the Archie Mannings, the Chad Kellys, the Bo Wallaces, those are kind of all gone. And we're never really going to quite look at a quarterback the same again, or a player the same way again, because now there's a mercenary aspect to the college football athlete and a professional athlete. The relationship between the fans and the players are inevitably going to change, because the previous system got them tons of endearment from the fan base, but next to no benefits, at least legally gotten. Now you get all these benefits to go to your school, but the endearment is going to go down. Because right now you have Jackson Dart, who is the Gatorade National Player of the Year, and by all means is set up for massive success at Ole Miss. But in the age of the transfer portal, I just don't know if he'll be looked at the same way as somebody that signed, paid his dues, like John Darnell in '89. Or Rush Showles and Tom Luke in 90. I just don't know if there's ever going to be another player viewed like those guys. these instruments of this university fighting against other universities in SEC. Now, essentially, college football has become minor league baseball. And the whole goal is to get to the NFL. And that is the entirety of it. And what the school wants has nothing to do with it. They'll opt out of bowl games and opt out of the combine. And I don't even know what they're opting out of. They're just pretty much opting out of putting bad things on tape. But because of that, I think the relationship between the players and the fans are going to change. Now, I don't know what that is going to look like. I don't know. But I do know that somebody like Archie Manning, somebody like Eli Manning, and those that came to Ole Miss and paid their dues and did all the things they have to do, those are things of the past. It turns out that Rufus French in 97 or 98 was a trailblazer. And great player, but he's never really been looked at with the esteem that he deserves. Because he was essentially since he declared for the draft when everybody told him not to, it kind of put him in a bad spot as far as his legacy. And that's my point. When people leave Ole Miss, they're going to have a different legacy now than Matt Corral or Eli Manning or even somebody else. Because it's not the same players. They're not playing the same game anymore. This is closer to the player that comes through your minor league systems for a year or two in AA ball that's playing for the Mississippi Braves and goes on to AAA and makes it to the NFL or in Major League Baseball and playing for the Braves, more so than back in the days of college football when it was its own entity. It wasn't a step on the way to the NFL. It was something to do in the meantime. And if you were good enough to make the NFL, you could. But college football has gone down this road to where professionalism has overtaken amateurism. And because of that, the relationship between the fans and the players are going to change. Now, I'm not saying anything is going to be acrimonious. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm saying they will be viewed like the player that spent a year in AAA on their way to the big club, as opposed to somebody that sat there and paid their dues and did what they had to do. The Russ Shaws of the world, the Randy Baldwins of the world. Those guys will always be viewed in a different lens than the Jerry and Ely's, than even the Matt Corrals. And it doesn't matter what type of leader they are and what they're doing. It's just going to change the way it's looked whenever they come through your program. Because college sports, no matter how we look at it, a lot of us view the college game as a superior entertainment choice over the NFL. But the way it sets now is just a way station on the way to the NFL for players. And it's interesting, between NIL and this transfer portal and the power that players have right now, it's almost a bad thing, but it's not a bad thing. But it's right there in that gray area where the college game is completely being taken away from us. Because we're not playing the game. We might be the ones invested in the game, and the reason they have those nice stadiums and these TV contracts and this whole 9 yards, but the game is being taken from us. And we are becoming the Mississippi Braves as opposed to an SEC program that stood on its own for years. Just is what it is. It's sad. Honestly, it's sad. But it is what it is. Now, coming up after this, we have Cody Prewitt coming on. Who's going to talk a little bit about that defense. He's going to talk about pre-spring or in spring practice and all that, and what he's been up to as of late. So stick around for that. This episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With their ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure the often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning of, is your Odyssey an LX or an EX? And wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing only the brand their warehouse happens to carry. You have computers. You have access to rockauto.com in your home and in your pocket. So save money when using Rock Auto. Why choose to spend 30, 50, or even 100% more for the same parts from the chain store or the car dealership? Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for 20 years, and the prices are reliably low for every customer. So go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution for your auto parts needs. So go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right locked on in there, how did you hear about us box, so that they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts you will ever need. rockauto.com. All right, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So do us a favor and hit subscribe, hit the bell for notifications of new videos, and of course, upvote the video itself. I am here with Ole Miss legend Cody Prewitt. We're going to talk all about his playing time at Ole Miss, and also we're going to look ahead to this spring itself. So how you doing, Cody?
Man, I'm doing great, brother. How are you doing?
Man, I'm doing pretty good. I mean, we have some video issues going back and forth, but I can hear you just fine. So one of the things that just is on my mind is the 2014 season. And when Laquan got injured in the Auburn game, and y'all going through, and it was such a high when everybody thought he was in the end zone, what did that do to the team afterwards? How long did it take y'all to bounce back from that?
I mean, it was hard to watch. It was hard to deal with. I remember the emotions of that game in that particular moment. Like you said, it was a really big high, thinking we had just scored, and then obviously, not scoring and then seeing Laquan not get up as fast as he normally does. It was unsettling. But as far as the mindset goes, it was a quick blow, but it's one of those things where we have a locker room full of guys that are ready to step up. No one's gonna fill shoes like Laquan did, but we have a locker room full of guys that are ready to step up, and that was just kind of our mindset to it. Next man up. We owed it to Laquan. We owed it to the team, the fans, Ole Miss. We couldn't stay down for that long.
Yes. And that team, that 2014 team, was a very stingy defense. I think you all led the nation in points per game. So
I want to say maybe 7-8 games in, I think our defense had scored more points than we allowed scored on us.
Interesting.
I may be wrong in that, but I believe that to be the case.
You guys were incredibly stingy, and game day was at LSU, I believe, and that was such a huge game. And it was one of those times that LSU actually circles the game because of Ole Miss, and that's kind of something that doesn't happen very often. But what was it like playing that game in Tiger Stadium that night?
Man, I will say this: that LSU, big rival, obviously, but Death Valley playing in Death Valley that's an experience I wish every college football player could experience. They've made something special down there. When you're in that you feel like a gladiator in the old Roman Coliseum, something like that. It's a special feeling.
Yeah, and that was a game where I think LSU was inside the 5-yard line 3 or 4 times and just couldn't get into the end zone. What do you remember about that game?
It was. I just remember being tough, man. It just felt like they were driving down the field just about every drive, and then we would bend, but we wouldn't break. The score was 10-7. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Neither defense really wanted to give in. It was just a good game. I don't think if there was someone out there that didn't know what SEC football is supposed to, or what it used to be, I would say watch that game. I mean, you got bursts of good offense, and then you got stout defense that's just going at it. And I do remember towards the fourth quarter, I believe it was Leonard Fournette. He broke a little run off the sideline, and when you're running towards somebody, he was going to go out of bounds, so I didn't put my full force into it. I just kind of threw my body into him to push him out of bounds, and just the way I hit him, or the way he hit me, it just collapsed my right side a little bit, and I ended up bruising my rib. And I think that was the only time in my career that I ever did this number, is telling the coach I got to come off. I went over to the sideline, threw my helmet off, and I was like, Pat, I broke my ribs. I was fighting mad. And they took me off into the facility, or the little locker room area there, and they have some nice facilities down there too. I'll say that. But took me in there. They had an X-ray machine right there, in the stadium, and X-rayed me. Didn't break it, luckily, but it was a very painful experience. So my hat's off to him.
All right, so a little bit more happy memories. We start with Auburn and LSU. I apologize for that, Cody.
Oh no, I mean those are two. I mean they're two pivotal.
Yeah, in that season.
Pivotal games in that season. Obviously if we beat Auburn, and LSU, we're probably going to be, playing in. I would have said we probably could have made it to the national championship, but I guess the stars just wasn't aligned for us that year.
Yeah, if Laquan wouldn't have broke his ankle in that Auburn game and that touchdown would have counted, you guys would have had a good shot to make the playoff that year. Because going into that Auburn game, I think you were ranked 4th.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, I'm going to skip forward a little bit. I just recently started getting back active on Twitter and all that stuff. But then someone brought up the TCU game, and the TCU game aside, because that was
they should have been in the playoff too, by the way.
100%. But
yeah.
I remember talking to Kay White at the Senior Bowl, and me, I'm just what happened. It's exactly what I asked him. How'd y'all do that? Because that defense, we hadn't given up points like that all season, and probably the season before that. But I just asked him what happened, and he said it was one of those game plans where it was kind of a flip of a coin. They were either going to kill us or they're going to get killed, and they had I guess they got the right side of the coin flip on that. But go ahead.
No, go finish up.
I was just going to say, going back to the Auburn and LSU game, that was we ended up we beat Bama that year, which was a totally surreal experience. But if touchdown would have held up, would have kept Laquan healthy, I'm hard pressed to think of another team other than TCU that we would have had a hard time beating.
Yeah. Also, so a little bit more happy talk right now with the uniforms that Hugh Freeze had, not the standard ones that we still see today, the powder and red and the blue and all that. What was the combination that just got your attention that you really liked?
I believe there was my senior year. I believe we wore the powder blue helmets against Memphis.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that's the only time we wore the powder blue helmets during my tenure there. But
yeah, I think that was the Chucky Mullins anniversary or something like that.
Right. Yeah, that's right. But I love the powder blue helmets. I wish I had one for myself. I got the navy one in my room, but I like the red jerseys and I like the red jerseys and the gray pants.
Okay.
I don't know. Simple. Which we didn't. Like I said, we didn't have the powder blue, unfortunately. Wish we'd have had that. Or the red and the white pants. I like that too.
Okay. Now, the LSU game back in your day, I always used to tell people, if you want a game that just looks like football, it would be Ole Miss wearing the navy helmets, the red jerseys, and the gray pants, and LSU in their yellow, white, and yellow. And that just looked like football. What do you think about that?
I would absolutely agree. And of course, like I said, it's, well, one, both the combinations for, both each team in that scenario. I mean, it just kind of shows the tradition that is, that we love in the SEC. And also, when you think about those two programs, especially, that particular game, it's a perfect example of just a good rivalry. Two teams that as soon as you step on the field, we hate each other, and it's usually a pretty good fight. And I know, my last or from my sophomore year going forward, it was a good fight every year.
There's that picture on the internet of DT face mask to face mask with an LSU player, and it just contrasts so beautifully. And that's the way it is. That's the one game that I just don't want to see the powder blue jerseys and the white helmets or the powder blue helmets. I want to see traditional uniform combinations for that game.
I can respect that. I wouldn't say I disagree with that either. Like I said, I love the powder blue. I love the the innovative kind of uniform combinations that, Kiffin brought with him and Coach Freeze started to kind of use. But at the same time, I really appreciate the tradition and history that comes with, just keeping it simple.
Okay. Before we move on to this season, I do want to ask you one question. Was Johnny Manziel as hard to stop and deal with as it looked like?
100%. Man, anytime in my book, he's hands down probably the best. He's the best college football player that I played, and I pointed to it was, I think, my sophomore year when they played in Oxford, and I had 4 turnovers just myself, and then we had 2 other turnovers on defense, so I think it's 6 turnovers against the team. When you think about football, if a team gives up 6 turnovers, that team should probably lose. And I won't say single-handedly because, they had some good playmakers with them. Swope, slot receiver, Mike Evans was on that squad. But, I mean, Johnny Football was a force to be reckoned with. He was able to lead that team despite 6 turnovers to beat us on the road in what we had a packed out Vaught Hemingway Stadium. The stuff he did is stupid. It didn't make sense. It was frustrating to say the least.
Yeah, some games he played against, 2 teams would have 2 spies for half the field each. It's absolutely bizarre. It's amazing what he did. I think he's the best player I've ever seen live. And I saw Cam Newton. I saw the whole 9 yards. And, man, that kid was something else.
He really was. And that's the thing. When you try to compare him to, people like Cam Newton or Tim Tebow maybe, it's Tebow, Cam, they're I don't want to say predictable. That seems a little disrespectful, because they're both phenomenal athletes, but they were kind of predictable. You knew they had some bizarrely strong arms. They could throw the ball. They were accurate, but they're big guys. They're fixing to run it. They're going to run it down your throat. And both of them would. I mean, that's what they would do. With Johnny Football, you didn't know, and he was like a running back or more like a slot receiver once he had the ball and he was running, but he could also throw it dang 70 yards, and just while he was running, it was ridiculous.
Yeah, do you recognize some of the stuff the Arizona Cardinals do now with Kyler, the same stuff that they did back in the day with Johnny Football?
I don't watch much pro ball,
okay.
But I do remember watching Kyler when he was at Oklahoma, and he was close to getting there. I might be a little bit biased because I'd never played against Kyler, but I mean he was close, but I don't think he was quite on that just that ridiculously frustrating to try and guard level as Johnny football was or is.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to this spring practice that's going to start in about a week. First of all, what was spring practice? What did you try to actually work on whenever you went through spring practice?
Well, I'll start it off this way because my first spring practice, we had just gotten rid of a coaching staff, and we had a whole new coaching staff coming in. So that first spring was, it was pretty much just all the players we wanted to prove ourselves to, these new group of coaches that were coming in that, for the most part, had no idea what we were capable of. So that first spring was, it was really tense, really competitive, which it's always competitive as it should be, but it was hyper competitive because each and every one of us, we had a fresh start with this new coaching staff, and we were trying to fight for our positions. So it kind of felt a lot like a fall camp usually does. But with that first spring with the new coaching staff coming in, I remember I had a high ankle sprain. I don't know, maybe with a week or two left of spring ball, and ended up bumping me down in the depth chart. And it's can't say anything bad about it. It is what it is. When you have a high ankle sprain like that, you can't perform like you want to or should. So I just kind of dropped in the depth chart. I knew I could perform better, but those coaches didn't know that. And it's because they were new. And fast forward to fall camp. That fall camp, I was 2 or 3 days into camp. I had worked my way back up to being a starter, and then when the season started, I was able to kind of solidify that starting position. But after that initial new coach spring, where it was kind of jolting and hyper competitive, spring ball was really, for the most part, the first time that all you got together back with your teammates. After the winter and the off season and all that boring stuff, this is the first time you get to see everybody and hit people and just get back to football for a little while. So it's always exciting. Like I said, just other than that first spring, it was usually a pretty relaxed, fun, just time to compete and just get better. So the following springs after my first spring it was fairly laid back, and it was just a time to reconnect with everybody, get back on the same page, try and pick up the momentum that you had leaving the previous season, and kind of set the standard for what you're about to take into the new season, and the work you're going to be putting in the off season and summer.
You kind of went through a smaller thing that is going through Ole Miss now between Jackson Dart and Luke Altmaier, but Barry Brunetti was there in the quarterback, and the transfer quarterback coming in was Bo Wallace. Any advice that you would give to these two competitors?
Man, just compete. It's football. I think one thing that gets in, I know something that got into my head when I first got to Ole Miss was maybe a little bit of doubt, something like that. But what I would say is, you're there for a reason. These coaches, they're not dumb. They know what they're doing, and you're there for a reason. So just go out there and compete, and just try and get better yourself every day. At the end of the day, your biggest competitor is yourself. But in this case, you are competing for a job. So in addition to competing with yourself and becoming your best self on the football field, you need to separate yourself from the rest of the team or from the rest of the guys at your position, and just kind of elevate yourself so that the coaching staff can start to kind of put the pieces together to, have everyone in the right place to make the team as successful as possible. I know with Luke, I know he was a really, really good dual threat quarterback in high school. We didn't get to see much of him last year. I'm a huge Matt Corral fan, Matty Ice forever, but I know he didn't get much playing time last year. So hopefully, he's been doing some involuntary workouts, stuff like that with the receivers, and getting a head start on Jackson Dart coming in, which I haven't done very much research on him. I know coming from the Pac-12, he's going to be used to throwing the ball. Most of the quarterbacks that come from the Pac-12 and receivers, most of those game plans are play styles are very heavy pass. So I think he'll be ready to sling the ball. I'd like to see Luke compete.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. Tune in tomorrow where Carrick McCutcheon comes on the show. The Friday will be Tom Vanderford. Now make your second listen Locked On NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy and former NFL quarterback Eric Crocker bring the NFL Draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Cody, man, thank you very much for coming aboard today. We had a little bit of trouble with the video, but the audio is just fine. But thank you very much, man.
Hey, I appreciate you having me. We'll get the video worked out next time. How about that?
Absolutely. I'd love to have you back in a couple of weeks. And I have Bill Flowers come on. That's two different football perspectives, and that'd be something that our folks would really like.
Absolutely, brother. I'll be anytime you shoot me a DM.
All right, man. Thanks, Cody.
Thank you, brother.